Hey everyone, my name is Alex, and I'm coming at you from the Information Communities class. For those of you obviously following my blog, you know that my chosen information community is fantasy authors. And if you've been following, you know that when I refer to the fantasy author community, I'm not just talking about published authors. I'm talking about all sorts of people, hobbyists and people with varying level of interests in the worlds of fantasy and gaming and world building within the fantasy sphere. So that's Dungeons and Dragons players, that's people who like to make maps and share maps, and people who like to take part in this community online that is very explorative and very inspirational in the literal sense, very filled with inspiration, very inspired by Tolkien, the fan fiction community, um, hobby writers, people who maybe aren't published but are still exchanging their works. And it's a really, really big community, and uh, kind of we've sort of understand how big it is now because of emerging technologies. I mean, writing fantasy and creating fantasy was for decades and decades and decades always a pretty solitary thing, especially if you were just a straight up author. But, at the maximum, people creating and participating in the fantasy creation space would really only be very small groups of people in tabletop role-playing groups or gaming groups and stuff like that. With the advent of the internet and the emergence of these vast, vibrant, dynamic internet communities, we kind of discovered that you can have, instead of just a handful of people, you can have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people exchanging their ideas and their fantasy inspirations and their drawings and their rules and all the little things that go into their fantasy worlds. People picking off each other, people debating, stuff like that. So on the advent of that, at least right now, is Reddit. And there are so many fantasy writing, world building subreddits. And I'm gonna take you on a little tour through a couple of them so you can kind of get an idea of just how dynamic um these groups are and how vast. Once again, we're talking about like these groups that first kind of emerged in the mid 20th century and were incredibly almost definitionally not very socially exuberant, but have now become so because they have the exchange of information that comes from the internet. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and what you're looking at here is the world building subreddit, which is kind of a nexus subreddit for all spaces of fantasy world building, for names, for maps, for conversations, for artists, for game masters. In the nature of Reddit, you can see right over here uh, just how many people are communicating right now. We are in here the world building subreddit, the top 1% of all subreddits. There are 1.3 million members. Um, and at the moment, there are over 4,000 people on the subreddit right now, talking, exchanging, um, all this kind of stuff. And you can sort by new or top voted stuff, and you can see people have been posting just within the last hours so many ideas, so many illustrations, so many rules for magic, and various other things that just tickles the imagination of these people who, again, for the most part, are hobbyists, but really have a concentrated interest in this kind of stuff and in exchanging with this kind of stuff. Let's go to some of the examples. Here, for example, is a person who couldn't find the right type of map making software that they really wanted in order to build their worlds, in order to depict their fantasy world. So they decided to create their own called Legend Keeper, and they included a nice little video here. But this is, I mean, enormously detailed stuff. This is the kind of thing that, like, it would be really hard for in the pre-internet age for anyone to really learn about this kind of stuff and exchange these sorts of artifacts. But right here, it's someone makes a post and then other people start talking about it. 450 comments, people who are updating, people who are sharing their own creations on this. It just goes on and on and on. This forum-based conversational community. Another person shares a map that they made, and then other people talk with them and exchange and find out more about it. Another person just reposts a tweet about advice for creating magical systems, because magic is always really a major part of fantasy authorship and fantasy stories and books and games and stuff like that. So once again, you are instigating conversation. And that's what these communities are about. They're about avoiding the kind of intrinsic isolation of the writing and creation process, and instead inviting everyone in on it, so they can talk, so they can exchange, um and have fun with it. And I can go on and on. Here's some recommendations for armor creation and stuff like that. You can see in the on the that there is a Discord for these communities. You can see the related subreddits that include the character building, the character development subreddit, Character Forge for making your characters, map making, imaginary maps, fantasy writers, sci-fi writers, all these sorts of people who are these users who are engaging and who are talking with each other and bringing up old things and bringing up new things, and jumping between one subreddit and another, and who are really eagerly sharing. And so I think, there's an important social dynamic. That's what's important about this emerging technology. Because I think, especially nowadays, we always think about we people think about technology sometimes in like a distance like way, like technology is separating us, technology is keeping us apart from each other. Um, but in the case of the fantasy community, uh, the technologies like Reddit are really about bringing people together, and making people not feel alone. And so it's a really remarkable thing that we're kind of witnessing. If you go to like the fantasy subreddit, for example, you have interviews by fantasy authors, published fantasy authors, like in this case, Michael J. Sullivan, who's written a ton of fantasy books. And he creates what's called an AMA on the subreddit, and people will ask him questions and he will answer them and give recommendations, and it's just a space where people can exchange those ideas and find out more in a way that like they've never really been able to do before. Fantasy authors interacting with their readers and potential authors reading it. And if you click on Michael J. Sullivan's name, then you get to see in Reddit fashion all the things that he's written, all the things that he's responded to, all the posts that he's made across so many different subreddits. It's a truly fascinating space. I mean, sub Reddit is just made up of links. It's just links to different conversations and different people and different subreddits on all sorts of things, and it forms this amazing network of like-minded people that's been really interesting to explore, because you can really see the kind of imagination that people put in their kinds of work. So there's a lot of things that are really important to the fantasy community. But one of them increasingly in this age is sort of the importance of inspiration and exchange, and the ability to talk about your own campaigns and your own ideas, and then share and then see other people's ideas. So for information specialists who want to help out people who are part of this community, it's vital that they point these people to communities like this on Reddit, which are just, huge extended forums, which literally millions of people that they can reach out, that they can use as divergence points for jumping off points, for going to different YouTube channels, for exploring different books, for exploring different ideas. There's a lot of endless potential. So once again, we've gone from a very closed community as it emerged in the mid 20th century to a community where anyone can talk to anyone, anyone can exchange anything, and ideas flow very freely. And to this kind of community, ideas are the entire point. It's the ideas that you put into the written word and that you put into your games. So conclusively, the emergent community of Reddit and subreddits and fantasy subreddits in particular has had a magnificent effect on the online fantasy community, and that doesn't show any signs of stopping soon. So I had a lot of fun sharing this. I really recommend going through, if you're familiar with Reddit, to explore some of the stuff for your own, because no matter what you're interested in, you will find something. I mean, here's a person sharing like, oh, this is an excellent source for medieval world building, and they share an old book called The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England. If I was if I was interested in writing a book that had medieval inspirations, I would be very glad that someone had shared this. And again, just realize that people are sharing this stuff thousands of times a day. Um, so vitally important to the community. Really, really a wonderful, fascinating thing. So thank you guys. I will talk to you later. Thanks for listening in. Bye bye.